Thank you, Sean. So welcome, everybody. As usual, this Ask the Expert session is about your questions. So we're certainly very interested in seeing what it is that you guys are interested in. So I'll kind of monitor the chat area and we'll go from there. So we want to talk about workspaces and WorkSets. So this is a very big change that we had in MicroStation in the Connect edition. So let's get started here. Oh, so the Connect edition is, we have it completed. We are really focusing on the quality aspect of it. And of course, we are working on more interoperability, and the timeliness of the releases are targeted to make sure that any changes or bugs can be addressed quickly. So just wanted to sort of remind us of some of the important things about the Connect edition. So let's take a look at what our agenda for today is. We're going to take a look at workspaces and WorkSets. And I definitely want to get some feedback from you as to how this all works. So I might want to talk a little bit about these. These are some of the topics that we might want to talk about. I think there's going to be a lot more things that you are interested in. So you can get to your workspaces and your worksets, from your MicroStation Connect Edition start page. So if I'll just quickly tab on over there somewhere. It looks like I closed it down. I was actually playing with MicroStation J just a few minutes ago. It was a lot of fun. It was really fast too. Very surprisingly fast. I mean, blazing. Almost made me want to go back. So let's take a quick look at what we have here. So workspaces are found directly in the interface from the MicroStation start page. So right now, you'll see a list over here. You can choose a no workspace option. You can create a new workspace, or you can migrate a workspace from VNI to Connect Edition. Now, that's a configuration assistant to help you do the configuration migration. So just briefly click on that. We've talked about this before, so I'm not going to talk about it today. But as you can see, the configuration assistant is a wizard-like tool to move your V8i workspaces to Connect Edition. Okay, there's your workspace. You'll see that there's different sections to the workspace here. So here's a custom configuration, which is meaning that I or my CAD manager had created a configuration that they wanted me to use. So there's custom configurations. There's an example configuration. So this example configuration, as you can see here, is shipped by Bentley Systems. Those are our example files, the MicroStation example files. And then there's your own configurations you can create here. We'll talk about these things in a minute here, but under these custom configurations are our specific workspaces. Next to it is our WorkSets. In this particular case, I have this workspace has one workset, or I could create a workset. So if I switch to a different workspace, you can see this workspace has many worksets. So this is an interesting and important concept behind workspaces and worksets. The workspace is a filter for your worksets. So the list is different depending on the workspace you pick. So here's one called WLYP. It has a workset of the same name. That's legitimate, and it's the only workset available. So again, here you can see there's probably about 50. So workspace filters the list for worksets. So worksets are tied to workspaces. That's kind of interesting. Worksets are tied to workspaces. Let's go see how that works. Well, you'll see that when we came up with the concept of WorkSpaces and WorkSets, we were thinking about how you organize your data. So WorkSets, and I'm going to start from the bottom, kind of, because that's kind of where we start. We start thinking about a project. How do I organize my project data? Well, you will organize your project data into WorkSets, is what we were saying with Connect Edition. But you want to think about how you store that data, where you store it, how it's organized, what folder structures that you would use. Are there folder structures that we ship that are valuable to you? Can you use the folder structures that we have to make your own Connect Edition WorkSet folder structure? I think that's a pretty good idea. So if you kind of look at it, you'll find that our folder structures are pretty much covering the basics here. So here's one for a work set, and you can see that it has this work set or project has project-specific cell data, project-specific macros and seed libraries and symbology. So that's a basic setup of a work set. You can add to this, and I'll show you how to do that, but that's the basic setup. So work sets is how we organize our project data. So workspaces are how you organize your work sets. How do I organize my projects? Do I organize, these are all my projects for this department. These are all my projects for this client. These are all my projects for this facility. Well, this is kind of an interesting choice that has to be made here. You don't necessarily have to have just one. You could do departments and clients or facilities or any other combination you want to. These are just some sample ideas for what a workspace is. But what a workspace is how you organize your work sets. So you need to think about that. So are workspaces preserved when updating MicroStation? Yes, that is true, Manuel. When you update from, let's say, update 11 to update 12, your workspaces and worksets will be preserved. Okay, let's go take a look at this. How do I get workspaces to be organized? Well, this really ties back to a folder structure, and all MicroStation is doing at this particular time is looking at a folder structure. So I had a folder structure that allowed me to choose this particular workspace. So let's go take a look at it. So here's my workspaces are training, WLP, my workspace, etc. So you'll see these actually in Windows Explorer under workspaces. So here you can see there's client and my workspace. There's one called Jeppesen that I was working on. There's training and WLP. I'm just saying, hey, wait a minute. There's a bunch of the other ones in here too. There's one's called PHL1 and FM Global Workspace. Where are those? How come those aren't showing up on my list over here? Well, that's because actually what MicroStation is doing to create this list is created by these configuration files. So what MicroStation does, it comes and looks at this folder and says, hey, what config files do you have here? You have one called client.cfg. Great. I'm going to stick that in the list. The next one is FM Global Workspace. But you'll notice that after the period, the extension has an underscore. So it's underscore CFG. So this one right here. That's why it's hidden from that list. So this one over here too. Oh, wait, I thought I had another one in here, but I guess I don't. Oh, yeah, there it is. There's one over here. It has an underscore in there. So I'm just hiding it from the list. And actually, I could actually just go ahead and just create one. If I wanted to manually create it from the back end, I would just create a folder here. So for example, I could right-click, create a new folder. And we would call this one, for example, facility. And then all I need to do is, these are very generic files. I don't want to spend today on text files and these configuration files themselves, but they're very generic in this particular case, because this is a matter of a copy and a paste. And then renaming it to match this name. Now it's important that the name of the configuration file, the .cfg file, match the name of the folder. So this one becomes facility. Now what's interesting is that when I switch to MicroStation, and I'm going to have to restart it, but when I restart MicroStation, it will now show me that facility workspace. So that's a manual way of doing it. So there's always two ways of working these. You can always work it directly from Windows Explorer, or you can work it from the MicroStation interface. So let's take a look here. There you go. There's facility showing up in my list now. Now, that's one way of creating it. Another way of creating it is to simply use the Create Workspace button here. But I want to stop for a second and talk about workspaces and the naming again. So, since we can organize it by a variety of different ways, we do have an ability to name it. So let's take a look at how we do that. There is a label for this, and the workspaces label is going to be found underneath Program, Data, Bentley, MicroStation Connect Edition, and Configuration. There is a file in here called workspace setup.cfg. Now, this file is kind of a legacy piece of code or a little configuration macro. We don't actually use it anymore. But we did use it from update 0 through update 4. But we kept it because it actually had some interesting things in it. One of the interesting things that it has in it is a label. Now, you don't necessarily have to set this label in this file, but you could. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to uncomment it. And I'm going to give it the label client. So now I'm going to label my workspaces here. Oops, sorry about that. So right now you'll say create no workspace, create workspace. After the label, I started up 2 copies. The label will give me the ability to label that particular pick list. I forgot to disable my ProjectWise. So here we go. Oops. I guess I didn't save it. Something. Just make sure I'm in the right area. Oh, I know what I did wrong. Haha. I'm actually not in Connect Edition. I'm in MicroStation 10.12.0. I'm actually running build 30. Wow. I'm really out of date. Wait. Nope, that is the right location. All right, let me try it one more time. Not particularly a critical point, but it is nice to see. So you can change the label, and if it's not working here, I'm not going to worry about it. Yeah, it should say no client. Not sure what happened here. Well, let's go ahead and create a workspace through the interface. So you create a workspace here, and again, you can, the workspace may be a department. So there's many ways of going. I could actually use the department name. So this might be the roadway department. So here's the standard subfolders that you can use. You can see that it's creating, here's the root folder. There are WorkSets folder. So this is where it puts the work set. So it's going to create a folder structure here. So you can see that it's going to tack on the word roadway because that's the name of the workspace. Then I'll create a subfolder called WorkSets. It also creates a standards folder. These are the standards for this workspace. So, for example, if this is the roadway department, where it says standards folder, it's the roadway standards. So these are the standards for this department. So here we can go ahead and create a work set. It prompts us right away because the work set is linked to the workspace. So here you can go ahead and put in a project. There are templates, I'll come back to that. But what's interesting is that when you create a work set, it also has that same root folder. So you can see there's a project name tacked onto the end of the work set. There's the design file, and here's all those subfolders. Now, if you remember earlier on, we looked at the subfolders that the work sets created, were created. So let's take a quick look again. So remind ourselves of the work set structure. So there's the standards like cell, data, dgnlib. You'll notice that you can actually do subfolders here as well. And if you read the little pop-up text here, you'll notice that this particular field here, standards subfolders, is actually configurable through a configuration variable, and that variable is at the bottom there. It's underbar UST and underbar workset standard subdirectories. So I can add any more, if I wanted to add another directory here, like maybe I wanted a fonts directory, then I can go ahead and just type it right in. Or I could add it to the variable. Finally, I can actually connect this to a project on the web, and I'll come back and do one of those. So go ahead and click on OK. It's going to create a work set for me. And when I go browse now, you'll see that it's going to go ahead and browse for there it is, the work set under the roadway department. The work set is called Project ABC. There's my files. There's my subfolders, including that fonts folder that I added on to the work set. So those are the basics there. I just want to remind you of a couple of other things that we did here. So remember that V8i, we had 5 levels. In Connect Edition, we have 7. So we took the workspace level and added it to our set of levels, and there's another also a role level. But you can see workspace and work set are right in the middle there. Okay. Now, there are a few other things I wanted to talk about, but I wanted to make sure I got some of your questions in there. Are you able to read the root for worksets to be a location? So yeah, actually, John, we are working on that one. The root for worksets specifies both where that configuration file is stored and the root itself. So we need a separate variable, and yes, that is in queue. So at the moment, no, but it actually should be hopefully update 13. I think is what it's targeted for. So a couple of concepts I wanted to throw out at you. I'm kind of curious as to what you guys think about this. So let's go back to this. I have this set of workspaces, and again, as we understood, whatever you pick from this list will filter automatically what you see in this list. But what if it wasn't that case? What if there was, let's say, here's the list of available work sets for this workspace. But what if I wanted to have like a browse button down here? I wanted to go pick something else. What I'm seeing in this list is not what I need. So I'm going to go browse for what I do need. What do you guys think about that? Sort of like a roaming workspace. So there's one thought. Here's another thought, and something that I really like, and I'd kind of like to work towards, because everything is project-based. You don't wake up in the morning thinking about, or log in the morning thinking about, it's probably me, I wake up in the morning thinking about it. But it's like, what project am I working on today? You don't really think about, well, what workspace am I going to pick today, and then what project? Nobody really thinks about workspaces or you're project focused. What if we had essentially just a set of work sets here that you would, there wouldn't even be a project, there wouldn't even be this pick list here. What if there's just one pick list of projects? What if we rolled up everything into a work set? So right now, configuration is kind of done through files. So we're trying to think of other ways of doing it to make your life easier. As you saw a little bit earlier, the workspaces and work sets require an understanding of these configuration files. And they can be a little difficult to understand and read. So we want to actually get away from this text file stuff. We don't want you to worry about $, parentheses, etc. But instead I want to have an interface that you would use. So I'm kind of curious as to whether or not any of you guys would be able to do that. Could you work with just work sets? You're probably thinking, hey, wait a minute, I have roadway CAD standards, and then I might have workset CAD standards. Well, what if that's possible to just roll that all up? You could roll up your workspace and your workset and your organization into one standard, one level. Instead of 7, there's 1. So kind of some ideas. I want to throw those out at you. Want your opinion. Do you think that's worth it? How about getting away from the configuration files? They'll still be there for those of us who like it, and yes, some of us do like it. But it's not a pleasant experience for somebody new. For somebody new, you expect an interface. They don't want to look at text files. So would that make your life easier if we can configure workspaces and work sets through an interface? So some things to think about, and I definitely want your opinions. So yeah, Jeff's got a great question here. Jeff's saying, can we copy existing directory structures to be used for new work sets? Thank you, Josh. That is correct. The answer is yes. And let me show you how to do it. So I want to create a new work set. I'm in the training workspace. Let me go ahead and go to client. I'll do it over there. Actually, no. I'll go back to training. I have things set up over there already. Yes, you're right, John. Civil is adding an 8th layer, which is kind of organization-civil. But that's kind of the point. There's too many layers. There's a lot of complication. One way to simplify that is to roll everything up into a single project, a single work set. I'd like you to think about that because it's a difficult concept. For those of us who've been doing this for a long time, it's kind of a hard concept to accept. So I want you to beat it up and tell me why it's wrong. Let's go take a look at what Jeff was asking about. He wants to copy an existing directory structure to be used for new work sets. So when I go to create work sets, Jeff, I'm going to go ahead and create a new one here. let me go ahead and try to tie this into a connected project too. So I will create this one, call it Connect Migration. So this is to move a workspace to a configuration. All right, good enough. So here's the trick, Jeff. It's the template. You can choose any other work set to act as a template for your new one. So my new one is Connect Migration. Say copy any one of these as, and you'll notice what I do. I actually create a template. There's my template work set. I create a work set called template work set, so I can use it for this particular purpose. Now, this is an empty folder structure, but it is actually possible to copy the files too. So by default, it copies the files. So not only does it copy the folder structure, but all the files within that folder structure. However, if you do not want to bring the files along, you simply just create the folders only. And you'll notice that when you select a templated work set, all the rest of this is grayed out because it's filled in for you. Now I can connect this to a connected project, so I can go browse on connect.bentley.com and choose a project to connect it to. Better not mess up somebody else's project. I'm good at doing that. There we go. That one's mine. All right. So now I've got it connected to a project. I've got a template, and I'm ready to go. Now, if I go browse this folder structure, there's Connect Migration. There's the DGN folder, and there's all my subfolders. Now, admittedly, it's not particularly exciting there, but if you look at this template work set, you'll see that it's identical to that as well. So these two folder structures are identical. Okay, got a couple more questions coming in. Eddie's asking, yes, I think that adding an interface for config management would be beneficial, but I would suggest that it be within another application that we can limit to admins. Really good idea there, Eddie. I'm thinking along the same lines. However, there is some technical reasons why we might want to make it a standalone application. The reason primarily being that when you start MicroStation or any product, you're loading up some variables. You got to load variables to start it. So now those little variables are locked in. And if you want to change those preliminary variables, you can't because they're locked in. So having a standalone application, which again, you could limit who gets to download it and install it. That was the approach we were thinking about taking. Though your approach of putting it inside MicroStation or a Power Platform application is also being considered. So just, yeah, thank you. Okay, cool. Thank you, John. So you're using org civil, and department. So you're using the organizational standard, and the organizational standard is a standard that applies to the entire organization. So, for example, in my particular case, here's my configuration called Bentley Connect Training. There's my organizational standard. And I do mess around a lot here. There's WorkSpaces. So the organizational standard applies to everybody in the entire organization, regardless of your department or what project you're working on. For example, your company logo. Your company logo is going to be standard regardless of where you're using it and what project you're using it on. Right, and John's org is location for standards for instance plotting. Org civil is a delivery of the design standards to the partners. WorkSpaces is a department. Thank you. That's really cool. And WorkSet as a project. If it was one, what do I give business partners? Yeah, good question. So what we would do in that particular case, perhaps, John, is to roll up your work set into your workspace and then choose the one of the other ones. Org Civil makes more sense. So we wouldn't necessarily have to choose every level. With the interface, we could choose which levels we want to integrate into a single work set. You know, that does it does introduce a few other issues. For example, now you might have big lists of things, but with filters, I think we can manage it. So you might have a big list of textiles. You might have a big list of dim styles. But with filters, just like we have level filters, we can reduce the size of the list. So by using this external application, we can choose how to create a particular work set that's all rolled up. Again, just some thoughts we have. Yeah, I know. That project list is big now. And it does cause some performance issues if the list gets too large. Hence the filtering idea. We have addressed those. Those were primarily addressed in update 11. The large list is an issue that we're aware of, and I will continue. Yep, I would agree, Tim. Filtering would help with this. Another concept that we'd like to think about with workspaces and WorkSets is to take it away from the files. Why don't we actually say, if you put a DGN file in this folder, I inherit this folder's workspace workset. Kind of the way ProjectWise does it. You just stick a file in ProjectWise folders, it knows it's CAD standard. So there's another concept. You just drop a file in a folder. Somebody's already set up a CAD standard for that folder structure, and we'd have an interface and a nice way of setting it up with wizards and all sorts of other things to help you. But that's kind of a one-time deal. At that point, it's just drag and drop. So another concept that we're thinking about, inheriting your CAD standard from the folder that you live in. So I throw a couple of those ideas out there, get you thinking a little bit, but let's come back and talk a little bit more about workspaces. In particular, I want to just dive down a little deeper into the work set. So here we have the work sets. In this particular case, we have a lot of work sets. And similarly, these will have a lot of configuration files. So for each folder, there is a corresponding configuration file. And at this time, these configuration files and their corresponding DGNWS are kind of stuck together. This is our DGN workset file. The DGNWS file is a DGN file for the most part. It's got a little funny little piece in it, but it's a DGN file that you can open. So you can actually open the DGNWS file inside MicroStation. What does it store? Well, it stores workset links. It stores custom properties for the workset. So for example, when you go to create a workset, you can create a custom property. So that is stored in the DGNWS. The DGNWS also stores the sheet index for that project. So those two files are always associated to their folder. There is a couple of additional enhancements that we'd like to do here as well, where these files are located. I think John had mentioned that a little bit earlier, that we are working on that, in particular ability to move these files to different locations. And keep them independent. There are some dependencies still, and we'll work through those. So those are the workset configuration files. Now you can get into any one of these files, of course, using a text editor. There's lots of stuff that you can do in here. And of course, this applies to all of the workset related DGN files and other standards files, DGN libs, etc. These come from templates. So you want to make sure that if you're going to do a lot of customization to these workset configurations, please first make those changes to your template so that you don't have to make the changes over and over again. So make it in the template file, and then when you create new worksets, all of your customization to this template file will come along with it. Okay, more questions out there at the moment? Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and put my email address in the chat window if you have additional questions. Please feel free to reach out. We are working again on several new projects in here. I gave you a couple of hints about some of the things that we're doing. I'd really like your input on what you think a user interface would look like. What would make your life easier as a CAD manager given Bentley's configuration system? If you're familiar with our configuration system, you'll notice a very powerful system, and we've been reluctant to make a lot of changes to it because it provides a lot of capability. So we don't want to lose that capability when we move to a new system. But I do want to put an interface. I want to put a happy face on this. So want your input on that. Yeah, organization civil. Dave, I'll talk to Dan Ahern as well about this. I know we were just actually discussing it yesterday, but he's kind of the expert on that. So for organizational civil, give Dan a buzz. He will be able to point you. I can go over some of the details here. It just sort of provides us another way of organizing data. So, for example, John mentioned that they use organization for their the standards for their instance plotting, and they use organization civil for their standards that have to be delivered to partners. So Jeff is asking, any downside to having a workset function in a project directory structure on OneDrive path that calls standards? Not at all. Absolutely perfectly legitimate, Jeff. In fact, I would say that most of our users do that the project data is in a different location than their CAD standards data. If you're having trouble with that, Jeff, or it's not making sense on how to do it, please just reach out to me. Happy to help you with that. And there's no downside. In fact, there's a lot of upside to doing it that way. Kind of keeping your standards away from your data, because you don't want users to go and mess with your CAD standards. So you want to lock it up and throw away the key. Kind of. All right. Yep. There's lots of choices, and I think the reason there's lots of choices basically is because people's IT infrastructures are different. So there is a need to have flexibility. So some might say it's too flexible, but we'll find a way of making it easier. Oh, so John's got a question. One of the big things in standalone MicroStation won't find org civil. Yeah. Yeah, thanks, John. I will take that under consideration right now. I'll make a note about that, and we'll file a defect, because you're right. Standalone MicroStation, you're going to have some of those that are looking at work sets that were created with Open Roads Designer, where org civil comes from. And it's not going to know about it. There is an initiative that we have called One Configuration, which will allow us to have a composite folder structure for work sets, because work sets are projects, and projects require many applications to complete. So some people might be using Open Roads Designer, some people might be using Open Bridge Modeler, some people might be using MicroStation. They're all looking at the same DGNs. But Open Roads Designer's got this org civil thing. MicroStation doesn't understand that. So we will work through that. Yeah, it is known, John, so thank you for reminding us of that. And one configuration is kind of the way that we'd like to solve it. Eddie's asking, do we need to distribute modified configuration files to each user in order to point to a server-based organization or workspace set of standards? Or could you do something like V8I with a shortcut? Yep, those shortcuts still exist. If you want to do it that way, Eddie, absolutely. The typical methodology is in Connect Edition actually comes from the installation. So when you're installing MicroStation, you're presented with a choice during the installation to point to a server location or a server share or something like UNC location for your files. And in fact, that's how it knows where to find this. Now, that is actually written to a file called configuration setup. That is actually sort of being maintained by us, so you're really not meant to edit it. In fact, it tells you not to edit it. There are many places where you can redirect. One of the most common places for us to recommend people redirect is that configuration setup file. So when you install it, it gets created then. And if not, then you can actually use any files below this. So like in the organizations folder, you could use the standards.cfg to redirect, or you could use a redirect file. People actually have a file called redirect.cfg. Again, Eddie, if you're having issues with that, not a problem, just let me know. The hooks still do work, so if you go to the MicroStation icon, go to the target line. At the end of this target line, simply put in a space minus question mark. And when you run the icon, there you go. There's all your key-ins, or command line arguments that you can type in and point to a specific work set or workspace. WK for workspace, WW. I don't know why that has to be said like you're a Texan, but WW. So you gotta just do it right. And that's how you can get it to work. All right, so Jeff is asking, I may have missed this in the beginning, my apologies. I tried to use the configuration migration utility. It didn't work due to disparity in the naming of the workspace. Is this a defect or a bug, or is this operating properly? It may be, yes. So the configuration assistant does rely in this version on a standard type of MicroStation workspace. So what I was looking for is the following, something similar to this. So you'll see a workspace. It doesn't actually have to say workspace. It could say whatever. But it is looking for a folder structure beneath it that has users and projects. So currently, if you separate your users and projects, it's only going to see one of those. It's not going to see both of them at the moment. But we are working on that. That should be fixed in update 13. There may be a quick workaround to it, so drop me an email, Jeff, and there's something else that you could try, and hopefully that'll work. But I will. There is a small workaround that might work for you. So drop me an email. Okay. Well, lots to talk about here. I didn't really want to go too deep into the weeds. I didn't really want to talk about variables or anything like that. I just wanted to make sure that you understood the general concepts here and kind of a couple ideas. Again, one of the other ideas that I was kicking around with some of our folks here was the concept of a roaming workspace. So when you pick a roaming workspace, it can choose any work set. It's not limited to the list that it filters. Kind of curious if you guys would find that valuable in your workflows. A roaming workspace. Okay, well, if you have any additional questions, please go ahead and type them in. Yeah, Eddie, go ahead. The PowerPoints generally for these are not being posted, but drop me an email and I'll send it to you. So my email address one more time. I'll put it in the chat window. And I'll be happy to send the PowerPoint to you. We will be posting, I think, we sort of working through how we want to post these videos. We'll find a way to get the videos to you as well. Probably YouTube. Yeah, Dave, I wish I knew. when will release 12 be posted? Let my people go. Let my software go. We are very close. There's just a couple of, yeah, probably next week, but maybe with a little bit of luck this week. There are, yeah, a couple of little things that are out of our control that delayed this release so substantially. Apologies. We will get back on track with update 13. So basically, all of our developers are done with update 12, except for just one or two things. So almost everybody's working on update 13 at the moment. And that will be, we are really focused on getting back on track, so that will be April 1st. Off topic, okay, no worries. Off topic is good. I heard a rumor last year that there will be an improvement on line styles. Yes, we do have an epic or a story around line styles that we're developing. It involves a new interface, which is a primary complaint. It will involve some additional features and capabilities. So the ability to use RGB colors, the ability to use parametrics in the line style itself, and all sorts of other things, cells. So yeah, absolutely. This is, and you beat me to it, Jeff. You beat me to it. It's all specced out. I want to communicate to you that we are very tightly focused on bugs in the next couple of releases. So we are squashing bugs left and right, and we're going to continue to do that until we're satisfied that the level is manageable. So we will resume, well, obviously high-level enhancements that have to continue. Those will, but they'll be very limited. Projects like custom line style, redoing the custom line style dialog will resume the second half of this year. I'm just going to bring this back. Brought it up real quick here. So just a very basic idea. So get rid of the RSC, replace it with a DGN lib, and expand the capabilities. Things we'd like to add: parametric solids, surfaces. We're still having some trouble with that. So things that we need to solve: true color support, raster support, rendering, item types, ability to place it in any view instead of just a top view, and a few more things. Scale imported RSC, better intelligence to deconflict intersections. So if you got suggestions, please send them to me. I've kind of done a quick mock-up of what the interface looks like, but that's going to get changed like 17 times. So there's no point in looking at that at the moment. But nonetheless, if you've got ideas on what you'd like to see in the custom line styles dialog, things that are missing, things you'd like, please send them to me. So John, you're talking about this dialog here, right? Oops. Right. That. Let me just make sure I understand. I think I do. I think it was the key in. So just to be sure that I'm clear on this, the configuration variables dialog allows you to edit a UCF, a personal.ucf. Yeah. So yeah, if you go save it, you'll see, whoops, it's UCF. All right, what, no, when editing in Notepad, edit a user or project and do a save. Okay, I'm totally missing it. Editing in Notepad, so I go to Notepad. Oh, I got it, right. So I see what you're saying. So what John is saying is, like, if I came in here and added in some stuff, whatever, then I save it. Then I go back into the UI here and reselect it. I'm just making stuff up here at the moment. I reselect whatever it is. That will then pick up the changes that I made to this configuration file. Yeah, good point, John. Thank you. I will double check that. No, it doesn't. You're right about that. And that is irritating. So I will make sure. I thought that would have been filed, but I'll double check. I will file it if it's not. Thank you. Chad, I don't know if this is the right place to ask. It is the right place to ask. But I have a title block editor VBA macro that was written using tags. It's a way to rework at them using new item types. Wow, that is very timely, Chad. We are in the process of switching our title block editor to use item types. This is the title block integration editor from ProjectWise. There actually is a workflow. Now, whether or not everything is called out in VBA, I can't entirely be sure, but I will send you the workflow, Chad, and we can talk about it a little bit more detail offline. Again, just drop me an email. I do have something worked out for this, so hopefully it'll work for you. Can't guarantee you that 100% it'll work in VBA, though, so we'll double check that. Most of the stuff in item types is exposed in VBA, but there may be some parts and pieces missing. So, but yes, you're going in the right direction, Chad. I highly encourage that you look at this. If you've got a title block editor using tags, we definitely want you to look at using item types. I'd like to re-emphasize that we have changed our position on tags. They are no longer deprecated. If a defect appears in tags, we will fix it. If something breaks with tags, we will fix it. And we'll continue to do that until we have the item types completely worked out to replace tags in the title block editing system. So, other questions? That was awesome, folks. That was great. Lots of good questions. Please keep them coming if you got more. And again, if you don't, well, got lots of folks who are more than happy to help. All right then, Sean, I'll turn it back to you. Oh, you're Sean. Or I will just end it then. Thank you, John. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate you taking some time out of your day and spending it with us. Hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day. Take care. That was quick. Who ended it that quickly?
I don't know.
Was it me, really?
I don't know.
I don't think it was. I meant to shade the chat window.